Hey guys, Max here. Let's talk about iPhone 16 Pro Max. Here I have 15 Pro Max. Now, honestly speaking, I don't think people should be upgrading from 15 Pro Max simply because it's a very good device to begin with. And some of the changes from 15 Pro Max to 16 Pro Max, I would say some are good, but there are also some that are negative changes. And I'll go over this in this video. I only think people should upgrade if you get a really, really good trade deal or great deal from your carrier in order to get 16 Pro Max. Again, this is a fully baked and great device to begin with. So upgrading to 16 Pro Max, I just don't think 16 Pro Max has enough of reasons to be upgrading from 15 Pro Max to 16 Pro Max. Some of the negatives that I actually think that 16 Pro Max has to comparing to 15 Pro Max is the size. Now, if any of you who are watching this video ever asked any of my friends, they would say that I like big devices. Like the bigger the phone, the better. Most of my friends would actually tell me, "Hey, just buy a tablet or use it as a phone," which is which is possible when using, like for example, an iPad because of the ecosystem that Apple has incorporated. But that's besides the point. Unfortunately, in this case, I find 16 Pro Max to be a bit too big. I find it to be a bit more uncomfortable than 15 Pro Max. So 16 Pro Max is a very, I would say, it's a two-handed device. Using it one-handed, I find it to be uncomfortable. Like it literally, it feels so big. And using it one-handed, it's definitely uncomfortable versus like, for example, using 15 Pro Max where I'm able to do one-handed devices because it kind of feels lighter because it's a little bit smaller and it kind of feels lighter too versus 16 Pro Max. Now this feels like a brick, and generally in order to fully have it secured with the sizing that it is, my hand is usually here, so it's not a one-hand device in my opinion. Like you kind of force it to press on your pinky, and then in order to use it, long story short, I don't use this as much as I did 15 Pro Max. I'll use it for a short period and then I'll put it down because I do find fatigue with 16 Pro Max use. So I kind of lean to using voice to text versus then typing on 16 Pro Max. Now, don't get me wrong, bigger display is great for watching movies just because the display is bigger. It's great for browsing the web. It's great spending time on TikTok, watching reels on Instagram or Facebook, shorts on YouTube, whatever it is. It's for that purpose, entertainment. Bigger display is always better. Same thing like as for playing games. I just find it to be uncomfortable when using it in my hand for long periods of time. I find it uncomfortable. It feels heavier. Overall, just and it's funny because 6.7 to 6.9, it doesn't seem like so much of a big difference, but it just does feel that much bigger. And right here, you can see it in the video. You could see where 16 Pro Max is bigger than 15 Pro Max. And it feels wider, it feels taller, bezels are thinner, which somehow I'm also having issues with palm rejection, or let's say if I'm holding with two hands, it will register finger here and not here. Like the smaller bezels, I kind of look nice, but in this case, they're more of a negative side because again, it's registering. Like I could just hold it in my hand and like with the palm, hold it certain ways, and it would activate like you could see, like I'm holding it there, it's already activating the live photo. versus this having bigger, a little bit thicker bezels where the rejection of the finger kind of makes more sense because the bezels aren't so thin as they are on 16 Pro Max. Now, this is picking at small things because I think over time with use, a person gets adjusted to those changes and kind of does not become an issue. The only issue that I still find is, like you can see, it's registering finger. It's not comfortable to use. I just think it's pushing that a little bit too far with the size. I'm forced to use with two hands and not to, if I'm typing over here, like it's top heavy because the camera's over here. So it kind of forced to use more pressure in order to sustain the phone in my hands comfortably and type. But I can't do this for long periods because I find it to be more uncomfortable. I did not have the same issue with 15 Pro Max just because it feels smaller. Sadly, I'd have to admit this size is much more perfect versus to 16 Pro Max. I just think it's a little bit too big. And that's funny because for someone who likes using large displays and lean towards actually preferring to using tablets, but tablets are more comfortable to use because the weight is evenly spread out. It's more comfortable to just put it on, let's say, my lap or hold it with two hands. Now, this is not as comfortable to put on a lap because it's going to slide because it's not as wide. So the balancing of a small device is a little bit difficult. So unfortunately, I think it's a little bit too big. And I'm still kind of deciding whether I should just return it and get the regular 16 Pro. And this year, the differences between two are very minimal. Besides the small display and smaller battery, the difference is very minimal because they both have the same cameras, they both have beautiful displays. The difference is the size and the battery capacity. Yes, most people claim that they get 2 hours more of usage on the max battery. For me, it probably would be more because I use 16 Pro Max less than I did with 15 Pro Max, just because, again, I find it to be uncomfortable to hold it for long periods. And when I went to pick up my Series 10 titanium from the Apple store, and I did go play around with the 16 Pro model, honestly, I'm still deciding whether I should just return the Max version and go for the regular Pro version. The Pro feels great. I could still use it two-handed, but at the same time, it's also very comfortable to use it one-handed. So I'm kind of stuck at this point. I still have time to return and exchange. I don't know. Now, obviously, bigger displays are more comfortable for entertainment purposes. Like stationary wise, put it on the kickstand. I'm waiting for my later case to arrive so I could attach my kickstands. Bigger display is definitely more comfortable for movie watching and playing games and browsing. I just wish Apple kind of incorporated using split screen for the apps. Like for example, with Android devices, this is Pixel 9 Pro XL, and here I have Samsung S24 Ultra. This is Sony from 2023 flagship. So I generally would prefer that the bigger variant did have a large display. So this way I get to use more of that display real estate. But no, it's just a larger version of the regular Pro. Things just look bigger. There's not much more functionality versus to when comparing to the regular Pro model. So I'm hoping Apple does incorporate that. Actually, there is a suggestion link for the Apple where you could suggest what features they can incorporate, and I did submit it last week, and hopefully it doesn't go to waste. My suggestion that Apple does actually consider and give us functionality of using two apps side by side. Like I'm able to use it on the iPad, for example, that would be great. Then having the max variant of the iPhone would make total sense because I don't see using side by side comfortably of applications on the regular 16 Pro, but the Pro Max definitely makes more sense. But then again, it's something that I've wanted for quite some time now, even when before all this with that button devices came out, like with the 8 plus 7 plus, those devices, like even when I did play around with jailbreaking and did have side by side and more of a multitasking functionality on those devices, kind of made more sense to have larger devices. But in here is just a bigger version of the iPhone. There's practically absolutely no changes in the functionality. Yes, Apple did give us picture in picture where I could, let's say, use an application but still have the capability of a window of video that's playing in the background. Uh, Not a background, but picture in picture actually goes on top of whatever you're using. But that's not fully multitasking. This has a huge display. This display is capable of handling more than one app at the same time. Unfortunately, it's not the option in the Max model, and I think it's begging at this point, especially when this device, this display is so huge. Like for example, with S24 Ultra, this is a huge device, but at least I'm able to use two apps at the same time. Now, this device I use the least because these corners just jab into my palm and I just don't find it comfortable. Now, again, I said it in my previous videos, Google, they outdid themselves with the Pixels this year. I love Pixel 9 Pro XL. This is an amazing device. It's comfortable to hold, and even when the display is turned off, I confuse this for the iPhone. Like, I mean, come on. Come on. It's like, it's so close as far as how it looks. And I still think Pixel delivers on photo side of the camera. It still, I think, is the best. Now, I kind of stopped taking selfies with iPhones, I think since 13 Pro Max. 14, 15, and now 16, I am disappointed with selfie capabilities. Now, while trying to take the picture, I look great, but somehow once the picture is taken, the computation of that photography, of the photo itself, completely changes how the picture or the image looked when I was trying to take the picture. Especially if it's not in an area where there's enough light, it starts looking grainy. At the same time, the coloring and the background, a lot of things change from the original picture that I was trying to take. And I've tried to go into the settings, I tried to change things around, and it just doesn't change. Like I remember it was last year I went out, my friend who had it was an iPhone 12, and I had 15 Pro Max, and we tried taking selfies. Every time I took a selfie, it just looked not clear. It looked grainy. Obviously, it was in the dark. His pictures looked great, but mine just looked out of focus. They looked grainy. I couldn't find the reason. I'm always running some kind of beta on my iPhone, so maybe I was thinking if that was the issue, or maybe the screen protector that I had, I thought that was the issue, and I removed the screen protectors. I disenrolled from beta, went back to the stock version of the iOS, and still a horrible selfie outcome. Now, with the Pixel, you don't even have to try. The images come out to be looking amazing each time, whether it's selfie or whether it's using the main cameras. Like, this is the king when it comes to photography. Now, there's no competition as far as taking video with the iPhone. This just, and for someone like me, for example, who has access to so many devices, so many phones, tablets, iPhone just delivers in the video department. Like if I'm on the go and I need to record a video for YouTube, for example, iPhone would be the only device I'll be gravitating for. Now, Samsung S24 Ultra doesn't slack. I mean, it's not the best in taking photography, although it's not far off. I had to rate, I would say photography would be the Pixel, then it would be the iPhone, and then it would be the Samsung. But as far as rating with the video, iPhone would be number one, then I would go for S24 Ultra, and then Pixel would be my last choice. Now, those are devices that you can get through in United States through wireless providers. Then, of course, there is something that you would have to buy, not through wireless provider. Now, this is the Sony Xperia from last year. It was the flagship from last year. I think I paid like $1,700 for it. And this is the only device that I took with me to my trip on Egypt. It took amazing videos. It took amazing photography. Like Sony device, like it had no competition. It was amazing. Now, obviously, most people would not consider this device to be point and shoot, like point and shoot of photography. Like, for example, all of these are. I didn't change any settings. I just did point and shoot, and it was amazing. Absolutely amazing. But it's not available through the carriers, while all of these options are. So, since most people in the United States go for devices that they don't have to shell out all at once and usually go on some kind of payment plan, those are the big flagship players in the market. So, but going back to the iPhone 15 Pro Max and 16 Pro Max, I don't think there's enough in 16 Pro Max to upgrade from 15 Pro Max. At this point, 15 Pro Max is a fully baked device, in my opinion. And this was more released as a half-baked device. A lot of what was advertised is expected to come later on. Now, both of them have beta iOS 18.1, beta 5, so it already has AI built into it. I'm not gonna say the name SIRI. It's still in no competition what Android delivers. Like that smart assistant on Android just trashes SIRI. Hopefully one day, but over the years, SIRI has been struggling. I mean, I'm not gonna even talk about Bixby. Bixby was trash from the start, in my opinion. But when comparing to Google Smart Assistant versus to iPhone, what Apple offers, it's still, I think, behind. I know it's not, again, it's not fully ready for the release. And even though I do have beta, it gives me kind of a taste of what AI is capable of. And at this point, it's not really capable of a lot. It's nice to type and be able to go a little bit further than what SIRI was able to do in the past. But again, do not buy a device based on promises. At this point, both are capable of pretty much doing the same things. Difference is this does not have that button, and this does have the camera action button. I think that's what the Apple calls it. But now here is the camera button right here. It's in the comfortable position for taking pictures. Like I don't have to reach all the way here. It just makes more sense to have it right here. And it's actually a button. You press, you take the picture, and you're good. Here, it's like a mixture of a button and the capacitive, like what they did with the home button in the past. And it's not really functional at this point, in my opinion. Yes, you're able to, and I do use by activating the camera. Instead of looking for the app, you just press and it comes out. But for zooming in or changing other things in the camera, it's a headache. I honestly don't use that. I'd rather use on screen what I'm looking for, the half double tap and then scrolling. No, it's a headache. Honestly, it's a headache at this point. I'm sure Apple is gonna perfect it as the time goes on, but at this point, it's not the option. It's not the feature that I use. Honestly, do not go and buy an iPhone just because now it has another button on it. Now, this smart action button right here, I use that one for basically unmuting, putting on vibrate versus the sound profile. Both of them have, but literally the old ones with the slider, you're able to do a little bit more things with this side button. But again, 15 Pro Max already has it. But this button right here, not something that I would say go ahead and try to buy the new 16 Pro Max or 16 Pro just because the button is available. That's not the reason that I would say people should go and buy this phone. At this point, honestly, I can't find a reason to say, yes, this is a must versus over this. There's just not enough on the table to say you must go from this to this at all, because I think 15 Pro Max is already powerful enough like 16 Pro Max is. Actually, it is more comfortable to hold in hand with 15 Pro Max versus this, where I find myself using less and less just because it's so uncomfortable over long periods of time. Now, simply to respond, yes, but one-handed use, absolutely not. Just because it's so much bigger, I kind of feel like I'm gonna drop every time if I don't have the case on it. So, but then when you add case to it, it adds even thicker bulk, and it makes it even more or less one-handed device. So at least this, I'm able to comfortably use one-handed. But here, I think it's a little bit pushing that envelope by being a little bit too big. And internally, I am laughing because I always liked to go for bigger displays. In this case, I think it's just a little bit too big. And for someone who has average hand size and below, I think the Pro Max would be a little bit too much. Now, 16 Pro, I think that's the perfect device for this year. The 6.3 is a great size. 6.3 versus, for example, 6.7 on the 15 Pro Max. And I went to the Apple Store when I picked up my Series 10 Titanium, and I played around with it. And honestly, I'm still second guessing myself if going for 16 Pro Max was the right choice. Again, I do like watching things on the go, like using YouTube and things like that, or Netflix, and so bigger display always a plus. But then don't forget, we have this island here, so you're still losing some of that real estate from fully using it. Although some applications, I think, uh, was it the Prime? I think Prime Video. It doesn't adjust. Most of the videos that I do watch, somehow it takes the real estate of the entire display and this becomes in the way. Some YouTube videos, I partially see this island, like it only goes up to here and half of it still sticks out in the video, or it completely gives bigger black bars. So overall, this island is a little bit annoying, although I must admit it's functional. Like if I'm ordering, for example, from Uber Eats or whatever it is, like having that functionality where it tells me how far the driver is, it's functional. But do I think it's something that someone should be going for? No. Again, in the comparing both of them, they're both capable of doing same things. They both have amazing speakers. This is claimed to charge faster, about 6%, but the battery is larger. This is smaller battery, so the charging, I really don't see the difference. I don't use wireless charger. I'm a fan of using wired charger. So, and I usually charge overnight, so for me, it's not something that I see it's a must for people to jump through. It's not a reason to upgrade from 15 Pro Max. But speaking of the battery, with 15 Pro Max, and I work, my shift is about 12 and a half hours. So counting the travel time and all that, let's say 14 hours I spend on the days that I work, and I don't work every single day. So I would come home with sometimes 70% of battery remaining, and that's with a regular use. 16 Pro Max, I use less just because it's not comfortable. I don't find it comfortable to use. But yet again, I come home always with less than 50% of the battery remaining. Usually about 30 something, 40 something, but not even once since I got 16 Pro Max, I've came home with the battery more than 50%. So somehow utilization of the battery on 15 Pro Max was better. And I don't know if that 2 millimeter difference in the display, it makes that big change in the battery usage. But overall, I found myself having more battery remaining on 15 Pro Max. And again, I use 15 Pro Max more than I use 16 Pro Max just because, again, 16 Pro Max, I find it to be a little bit more uncomfortable to use just because when I have to type, I have to type over here. So there's a lot more of the phone over here. And because of the camera, it kind of begins to tilt down. So I, over a long period, this fatigue of trying to hold the device in place in my hand, it's just uncomfortable to use. Not to mention, like if I have to use with like one-handed, then because the palm sometimes it registers, or because of these thin bezels, like as you can see, it easily registers versus like, for example, here using it one-handed, that's not a problem. So overall, I find to be a little bit more uncomfortable to use versus than using this. So it's a very hard recommendation this year because I think 15 Pro Max is still fully capable, an amazing device comparing to 16 Pro Max. Yes, it's a new kid on the block. I just don't think Apple did enough with upgrades this year to 16 Pro Max. So if you are using 15 Pro Max and you're thinking of upgrading, I would say skip this year, and hopefully next year Apple actually does something different. But if you're using an older device, 14 Pro Max and older, and you want that USB-C charging capability, then yeah. Also, if you want that island experience, and if you're using like iPhone 12 Pro Max or 12, whatever, and you want that island, then I guess upgrading would be nice, but I wouldn't recommend going for 16 Pro Max. I find it to be a little bit, again, on the bigger side and a little bit more fatigued for use. And I'm not the only one because I'm connected to the other tech people who, as crazy as I am when it comes to upgrading devices every single year, and the response from all of them is the same. They're thinking of maybe going for the regular 16 Pro just because 16 Pro Max is just a little bit more uncomfortable to use when compared to 15 Pro Max. Now, most of them are sticking around with the Max variant just because of the larger display. That 2 hour extra, which most see the difference between from 16 Pro to 16 Pro Max, for some people that's enough, especially for those that have daily work schedule or they're always on the go and they rely on that extra battery. It just makes sense to have a larger battery capacity. But don't forget, the display is bigger. So for someone who's want to be watching movies all the time and using that display, so usage will dictate how good the battery is in overall in the long run. I'm gonna stick around with 16 Pro Max, but I still have a week to decide whether I want to do, well, less than a week at this point, whether I want to upgrade or I mean exchange it to 16 Pro. I'm actually thinking of just getting both, just because, again, if I'm on the go and I need to record a video or do something for the YouTube and I don't have my whole camera gear with me, I'll generally gravitate by grabbing an iPhone, just because the video capability is amazing. Like for someone who's thinking of starting a YouTube video, or someone who does have a YouTube video and they're thinking whether they should buy an expensive gear like cameras and stuff like that, iPhone just does things so great when it comes to recording videos, especially for YouTube purposes. And you could just open up YouTube Studio or the YouTube application and upload the video this way. Like, it's all in one device versus using something that's an actual camera, like the one that I have here, which is the Sony camera. Like, you have to record, you have to transfer, edit, and stuff like that. Like, this makes so much more sense. But when it comes to side button, Sony did it right. iPhone, at this point, time will tell, because I find this button to be pretty much useless. Yes, I do press to get the camera to come out. Let me find it. This is another problem. Like, it's so flushed that like it's hard to find it. But so you press, it comes out. But there you go. Like, to use this actual button, it's not comfortable. And then like trying to come out of there. Trying to find this. There you go. Zoom. I just think Apple needs to really work on this to, like, you can see it's so flushed with the edges of the you know, the sides of the phone, that most of the time, like, I end up like touching just the sides and not the button itself. um, I don't know, maybe Apple might, but then again, if you're recording things using vibration, kind of would not make sense, because I would say it would play negatively in the recording department of the video. So I don't know what Apple's gonna do. I was thinking maybe like incorporate, see, like I'm picking it up and I'm already touching the side button. I honestly don't know what Apple's gonna do. I'm sure they're gonna make things better in the long run. But at this point, it feels like a half-baked device overall. It's nice. Kind of think 15 Pro Max is a little bit nicer, but then again, that's based on my opinion, because it's not as uncomfortable to hold than 16 Pro Max. I think this is a little bit more on the comfortable side, but it's going to vary based on the user. Those that want a larger display on the go, like, you just have to do pros and cons. Overall, yes, 16 Pro Max has a lot more pros for entertainment purposes, but again, 16 Pro with 6.3 display is just much more comfortable for usage overall. Like 16 Pro Max, I find it to be more comfortable to use not when holding in hand and having it stationary on the table or something, or on a kickstand. But for a handed use, I think 16 Pro is like, people shouldn't be sleeping on that device. I think that device, and even though, like, I noticed 16 Pro Max looked like it sold out quicker than 16 Pro, because on the release date, even though I already had this in my hand, on the release date, I was easily able to find 16 Pro models available for pickup the same day, while 16 Pro Max was sold out in certain capacities and available more in a higher, like 512 gigabytes. I saw some colors were still available, but 16 Pro was available almost in all the capacities and in the storage capacities locally in the stores when I was looking around. So I think, again, most people going for the Pro Max because over the years Pro Max generally had more features over the regular Pro model, but this year Apple included pretty much what Pro Max has in the Pro, and really the difference is the size and the battery capacity. I'm sure I rambled in this video like I usually do, but I just wanted to put my input, especially for those who are considering making that upgrade. Speakers, again, I think for me, what's important when I buy a device, I look for display and speakers. Those are the two that are vital for my decision when buying a device. Apple has been doing amazing with their speakers, even from their first initial iPhone, when dealing with the competition in the market at that point. And here, I also think this is also, which I don't want to forget, I think the sound is louder on 16 Pro Max than 16 Pro. That I noticed the difference because when I was playing around with 16 Pro, and I already had 16 Pro Max with me, it sounded louder and fuller on 16 Pro Max versus 16 Pro. But I wouldn't mind using AirPods or whatever it is with the 16 Pro. Generally, because if I'm at the gym working out, I have my phone with me and I have my headphones. It's only good to have speakers where, let's say I'm at home or something, I'm sitting and I want to listen to something, then 16 Pro Max would be louder and fuller. This is what my opinion was when I was playing around with both. Anyway, thanks for watching. Sorry for a long video. But if you have any questions, please post below. I'm still looking into getting probably 16 Pro, as I'll have that as my main device, and for video purposes I'll probably have the 16 Pro Max as my secondary device, because I do want to play around with Final Cut on iPad Pro. That gives me capabilities of using two iPhones at the same time for different angle purposes. So it's the excuse that I'm using for myself at this point, with finding the reasons why I should get the 16 Pro. 15 Pro Max is going back because it's the device that I used uh, for the trade. Yep, that's basically it. Thanks for watching. If you have anything to say, just comment below.